There's a legal genocide of men currently underway in India. That was the message posted by 34-year-old Bengaluru Techie before taking his life. Atul Subhash had tagged Elon Musk and US President-elect Donald Trump in the post. Later, the young techie was found hanging in his home, leaving behind a chilling 24-page suicide note and a 90-minute-long video. Atul detailed the harassment that he was allegedly subjected to by his estranged wife and her family. The 24-page death note left by Subhash had "Justice is due" written on each page. According to this note, his wife was already receiving 40,000 every month as maintenance, despite being employed, and yet she demanded 2 to 4 lakh rupees more. He's alleged that his in-laws would repeatedly demand money in lakhs. When he refused, his wife left the Bengaluru home with their son in 2021. Atul also revealed how he was let down by the system. He said that the taxes he was paying from his salary were helping the police and the legal system in harassing him and his family. Let's listen in to his message, which was recorded by him before he ended his life.
मुझे खुद को ही खत्म कर लेना बेस्ट है मेरे लिए, क्योंकि जो मैं पैसे कमा रहा हूँ उसी से मैं अपने दुश्मन को बलवान बना रहा हूँ. वही पैसे मुझे ही बर्बाद करने के लिए यूज हो रहे हैं और ये साइकिल बढ़ता ही रहेगा, है ना. मेरे ही टैक्सेस के पैसे से ये कोर्ट, ये पुलिस सिस्टम मुझे और मेरी फैमिली को और बाकी लोगों को भी हैरास करेगा जो अच्छे लोग हैं. तो जो सप्लाई है वैल्यू का, उसी को खत्म कर देना चाहिए. और anyway gave me a suggestion क्या they told me to commit suicide, and I think they are right. That's the right solution what they've suggested me. इसी के साथ मैं ये वीडियो बंद करता हूँ. अब से थोड़े बहुत जो मेरे आखिरी काम है कंप्लीट करके मैं मुक्ति पाना चाहूंगा. इससे मैं अपने माँ बाप भाई से अलग से उनसे बात करूंगा लिखकर. हो सके तो माफ करना, जिस उम्र में मुझे अपने मम्मी पापा का सहारा बनना था, इस उम्र में उन्हें हमेशा के लिए दुख देके जा रहा हूं ऐसा. तो सॉरी. और बाकी आप लोग जो देख रहे हैं सब आपका कल्याण हो. थैंक यू.
Let's take a look at some of the accused in this entire case. Of course, remember the FIR has been filed on the basis of the complaint by Atul's family members. The first accused is Nikita Singhania, the wife of Atul, the estranged wife of Atul. The accused number 2 is Nisha Singhania, the mother-in-law of this person who has committed suicide, Atul Subhash. Accused number 3 is Anurag Singhania, the brother-in-law, who's of course Nikita's brother. Sushil Singhania is Nikita's uncle, who's accused number 4 in this entire case. Let's also look at some of the charges that have been filed in this entire case based upon, of course, the complaint of Atul's dying declaration and the FIR filed by the brother in Bengaluru. The first charge is that he was harassed by wife and in-laws. He was hounded, says Atul Subhash. Charge 2 is that there are multiple fake cases that have been filed. Charge 3 is that not allowed to meet his son. Charge 4 is that there was blackmail and extortion that was done with him. Charge 5 is that parents, kin, also harassed in this entire episode, is what Atul has really said. Now let's take a look at some of the other aspects of this entire case, because remember that this entire episode has left the parents, the family members of Atul shattered and devastated. They say they can't even imagine the torture that their son had to go through. Their only wish now is that for their son's life to have not been lost in vain. As they shed tears for the irreparable loss, Atul's family demands an overhaul of the judicial system that they allege is skewed and killed their son.
शहीद हो गया. इतने लोगों को कानून व्यवस्था के बारे में बता के, जो अपने भारत की कानून व्यवस्था है उसके बारे में बताया है, जो रिश्वत लेने वाली समस्या उसके बारे में बताया है.
मेरा बच्चा चला गया.
जागृत किया है उसने और कुछ नहीं किया.
हम दोनों का बुढ़ापे का सहारा था, छोड़ के चले गया. मेरा बच्चा छोड़ के चला गया.
मेरी बस डिमांड ये है कि मेरे भाई को जस्टिस मिलना चाहिए. मुझे और कोई सिस्टम से ये अपेक्षा है कि मेन के लिए भी कोई कानून आए. जो मेरे भाई के साथ हुआ वैसे बहुत सारे लोगों के साथ इस देश में हो रहा है. उस चीज़ को गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया समझे. अभी तक एक्शंस जो हैं वो नहीं हुए हैं पुलिस के द्वारा. अब आगे फर्दर कैसे प्रोसीड करना है वो हम लीगल एडवाइस लेके आगे बढ़ेंगे, आगे प्रोसीड करेंगे.
Of the many snippets cited as evidence by Atul, there's one exchange in court that in particular has caught attention, where Atul alleges that his mother-in-law asked him why he hasn't died by suicide yet. And as calls grow for justice, there are also demands for relooking at family laws, making them more equitable and gender neutral.
ये पहली बार नहीं है कि देश के जो फैमिली लॉज हैं इसके ऊपर एक क्वेश्चन मार्क पहली बार नहीं उठाया है। ये कई दशकों से इसका मिसयूज के बारे में चर्चा हो रही है। जो फैमिली लॉज हैं और विशेष रूप में जिन लॉज को मिसयूज करने का एक संभावना होती है, ऐसे सब लॉज जेंडर न्यूट्रल होना जरूरी है। सर, विशेष रूप में देश के जो लोअर जुडिशरी है उसमें कई सारे रिफॉर्म्स का जरूरत है।
बहुत अफसोस की बात है, ऐसे हादसा होना ही नहीं चाहिए कहीं देश में। अगर आम जनता को ये उम्मीद बचा नहीं है कि कहीं भी जाओ हर दरवाजे को थपथपाओ और उसमें उनकी नाइंसाफी हो रही है, तो ये बहुत खतरनाक बात है एक समाज के लिए। इट्स वेरी रिग्रेटेबल। और इम्प्लीमेंटिंग एजेंसीज और सख्त कार्रवाई इस पे करना, कोर्ट में का भी करना और पुलिस का भी करना चाहिए।
जुडिशरी पे भी सवाल
ऑफ कोर्स जुडिशरी पे सवाल उठा है तो सवाल का जवाब देनी चाहिए। सो मोटो कॉग्निसेंस कोर्ट शुड बी।
And the last person you saw speaking of there is a former Women and Child Development Minister, Renuka Chaudhary, and she too feels very strongly about this case. So is it just a flash in the pan, or are there wider concerns about misuse of law? Let's take a look at what the Supreme Court said just yesterday in the judgment of another case, but in a similar matter. There's a growing tendency to misuse laws protecting women from cruelty by in-laws, is what the Supreme Court has said. They've also gone on further to say that courts must exercise caution while deciding dowry harassment cases. They've gone on further to say that courts must prevent unnecessary harassment of innocent people, also noting that it's very, very common for family members of one of the spouses to actually be made accused in this entire case, and they must prevent misuse of legal provisions and the legal process. This is what the Supreme Court, which is the apex court of the country that sets down the law of the land, has expressed in terms of its concerns. The concerns in this particular case appear to be very, very valid concerns. Let's take this across to our guest joining us. We have Brinda Adige, activist. Also with us is Amit Deshpande, men's rights activist. Talishre, advocate, is joining us, and Swapnil Srivastav, senior associate of MZM Legal, is with us. Let me start with you first. Swapnil, now it's very, very important to look at this case from the perspective of what the Supreme Court has said. It's not just the isolated case of Atul, but there are cases where misuse does happen. And if Supreme Court is saying that there is a growing tendency of including family members in such cases, then this is a case which requires some legal safeguards, and strong ones at that, so that we don't have the kind of situation that we've seen, unfortunately, in the case of this Jaunpur matter, where the Bengaluru Techie has been forced to take his life.
See, it is very unfortunate that somebody had to lose their life because of marital strife. But what we need to have clarity on is the fact that the laws as they stand today are necessitated by societal factors which are prevalent in our country. It is an indisputable fact that crimes against women have constantly been on the rise. And the Supreme Court itself had clarified several years ago that mere misuse of a law is not a ground to strike that law aside. Having said that, the Supreme Court in 2010-2011 in the case of Arnesh Kumar came down heavily on the implementing agencies in such cases, such as the police. And they held that in any such case involving dowry or marital discord, the police has to necessarily conduct a preliminary inquiry before taking any action or making any arrests. So if today there is a fault that has to be found, then it has to be found in the implementing agency and not the law itself.
Brinda Adige, if there's a fault to be found, it's in the implementing agency and not the law itself. But look at this particular case. If we go by what the victim has said in his recorded 1.5 hour long video, he has clearly put the onus on the system, not just, of course, those who are his wife or their family members, but also on the judge.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with Swapan. Yes, the implementing agency. We also must hold the lawyers who file the affidavit on part of the wife and her family accountable? Why is it that we want to observe them? They are supposed to be the counsel, which means they are supposed to guide, they are supposed to advise, they are supposed to say, don't tell lies if there are lies. So misuse of law does not mean that you are going to dilute the laws. And like he pointed out, these laws have come after many, many years of struggle, many campaigns and rallies, demonstrations and PILs in every court, including the Supreme Court. So the laws must stay. The implementing agencies are the ones who need to be trained, who need to be specialized. Now tell me, how many judges really know all the laws? How many prosecutors are available over there with the knowledge of the law and the letter and spirit of the law? These are all very big questions. Nobody wants to answer them. Immediately saying that, misuse by women, maybe, but the lawyers who are representing the women and the families must also be pulled up. Let us not forget, on a daily basis, we have hundreds of cases where women commit suicide and die because of dowry harassment or domestic violence. There has not been this kind of outrage. We also know that very rarely do you have anybody leaving a note, forget any evidence, leaving a note also, because the society does not allow for them to have that kind of a luxury to say you can leave a note and then you can die, because they suffer so much for years together, nobody believes them.
Right.
Now the same stereotypical attitude and behavior is being shown towards women, towards men. So men need special laws, please get them.
Okay.
But
Men
gender
need special
neutral
laws, please
is
get
a
them.
no-no.
Talish Ray, would you like to respond to Brinda Adige? She says men need special laws, please get them. At the same time, she's asking about the role of the advocates, the lawyers in this particular case, because if they are the ones facilitating the misuse in the first place, should there be no action against them?
So I want to take a bit of a overview on this in terms of the fact that in terms of the misuse of the laws as well as the procedural elements and the lacunas that are there as well. So as much as all stakeholders need to be held accountable for this rather tragic incident that has taken place and the outcry that is there, as well as looking at the distress of the family which has obviously lost a young man in its prime, there are three specific issues I'd like to focus on. One, so far as the lawyers go, yes, we are officers of the court. We have a duty towards the court to be able to bring to light what is the truth. And in this case, as we looked at I have parts of his suicide note that has been analyzed. If you look at it, he's talking about how repeatedly the other side, which is his estranged wife, went in claiming that she had no knowledge of these cases being filed, which is rather surprising. Also, what is surprising is that the other stakeholders in terms of online courts being facilitated where parties cannot reach in person because of the distance that is there, and those were not entertained so far as the note itself claims. But the third and the very critical aspect so far as I'm concerned is that which comes up immediately if you look at the note, which is that of parental alienation. And I have been talking about this in terms of how unfair it is, how cruel it is to both parents, either of the parents that have been deprived of the company of their children, but also the impact that has been repeatedly pointed out by experts in terms of parental alienation being child abuse. And this is very highlighted in this case where he talks about how he wanted access to his child. And the very access was weaponized in terms of the fact that if you are not going to pay, I will not allow you access to your child. That itself being allowed to go on for a number of years is something that is very shameful and completely against the letter and the spirit of the law. Therefore, there are these procedural lacunas that are there which have been exploited time and again because of the very nature of this institution of marriage. And those are the gaps that need to be urgently addressed in terms of what are the responsibilities of each party where vis-a-vis maintenance is concerned. We have a plethora of laws, but we do not have something which is substantive which says this is the percentage in which it is going to go, or this is how much it should be, should somebody's salary be this limit to this limit. We can do that for taxation.
Well, perhaps there's need for better codification of some of the aspects that you spoke about, but let me bring in Amit
as well as
Deshpande.
bringing it as well as bringing it up to date.
Yes, bring it up to date. And of course, this we certainly hope this entire episode is a huge wake-up call in that regard. But Amit Deshpande, at the end of the day, there is a problem. We have laws such as the Dowry Act, etc., because there are huge number of women who still face these problems. Dowry deaths in this country were about 6,500 odd last year, and that's a significant number. How do we bring in these safeguards while, ensuring that the law and the purpose for which it was first brought in the first place is not defeated at the same time?
Okay, thank you so much for having me on this program. First, I'll just begin with one aspect. When we are talking about dowry deaths, we are having the number of 6,500 women committing suicide every year, and being registered under dowry death. But if we study the suicide data of our country, I have studied the past 50 years data, and we had released it during World Suicide Prevention Day. What we find is that about 90,000 married men commit suicide every year in India. Okay, compared to 30,000, married women committing suicide. And the interesting aspect is, when we think about men committing suicide, we feel that it could be because of any issues related to economy or their job. But 24% of men commit suicide because of family issues. Okay, and 23% commit suicide because of illnesses. So half of the chunk of men committing suicide is absolutely avoidable in terms of basic things. It's not economical. I would mean what I mean to say is, when there is a big chunk of men, about 20,000 men committing suicide because of family issues, are we even focusing on that in that direction? That is the first aspect I would say. We are not touching any laws or anything. But if you're talking about gender neutrality in every sense, why not extend the same laws to men as well? If the laws are so good, the misuse of the laws is not an issue, then why don't we just make it, instead of gendered terminology, we can use non-gendered terminology, like instead of husband or wife, we can make it a spouse. If a man faces domestic violence today in India, there is no way that he can expect any kind of justice, because there is no law. In this particular case also, if you go through Atul Subhash's whole statement, his wife was continuously asking money from him, and when he could not give that, then she left.
Yes, his allegation is that he was asked first to settle for 1 crore, then the demand went up to 3 crores. Certainly a lot of very disturbing aspects that many of our panelists have brought out, and we certainly hope that this sparks off a debate at least on the need for better safeguards to prevent misuse of this law as well as other laws that exist. Brinda Adige, Amit Deshpande, Talish Rai, Swapnil Srivastav, thanks so much for joining us this evening.